Good evening, everybody. Once again, I'm back on EduTalk at the behest of Harbour Press International. And today, I'm not going to talk to you alone. We have on this platform today a person who has got an experience of 34 years in the world of education. Yes, Dr. Arunji, who has done his PhD in American literature and has been a passionate professional in teaching English in schools for a long time. His association with Delhi Public School Society is too long, and he has been the principals of different DPS schools in different states of the country. Today, on this platform, his presence has added beauty to it. And I'm pretty sure that during our discussions on the topic today, we are going to throw lights on the dimensions of English language teaching. And I'm pretty sure also with one major factor that the things coming out of the horse's mouth would lead us towards perfection in teaching learning process at the schools. So without wasting any time now, I would like to welcome Dr. Arunji on this platform. Dr. Arunji, please.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this program of yours. I feel privileged, happy, and also personally pleased to interact with you after such a long time. And the topic, of course, is common for both of us. Our subject has been English. So wonderful. Thank you.
Right, sir. So today, sir, we are going to have a concrete discussion on the dimensions for English language teaching. So to begin with, the things that come to my mind is that besides the first language that we all use in our home, or we can say that it's the mother tongue that we are always comfortable with in conversation and conveying our messages and concepts to one another. We have got one language which is called English, and it is mandatory probably in most of the schools affiliated to CBSE in this country to have English as in a language of instruction. Along with that, English as a subject to be taught. So to begin with, I believe that English is required. But then why is it required is one part that we shall be discussing. English as a second language or a global language is prominently practiced in our country. So, sir, I believe that you can throw a light on this, that why do we feel that English is required?
Yes, Mr. Sinha, yeah, you're right that English is not our first language in India. Hardly for a very small percentage of people, it may be the first language. It is that I have observed in the new generation. I find that the children speak this language in the metro in certain places, but only in certain pockets, particularly in the IT cities. This is my observation. Because of a major background, cosmopolitan background that they have, then they keep on interacting globally with clients and with others and managers and everybody. But otherwise, of course, it is not our first language. We have to accept that. But I would say that it's an important language in India. It's a link language in India. Of course, it is also true that it was forced upon the Indians in the 19th century, in the early 19th century, you can say, and by whoever like Macaulay or whatever it may be. But somehow it stayed and it was able to, and of course, the British did not do any favor to us. They did it for their own purpose. to make use of the resources, whatever their aim was, but it was their own aims, their own interests for which they had used. But somehow, by default, it stayed and it became useful to us, and it has been able to unify even the country, because before the English was being used, there was no such link language. And of course, the communication, conveyance, transport, they were very slow, and it was not as such a global scenario as it is now. Even before independence,
Right, sir.
things were very different. So now it has become a global language because of whatever reason, the British dominance earlier and all that. And we got this by grace or by somehow default, and it became an asset for us. So, and it is an important language, it is a unifying language, it's a link language for India, not, of course, the first language. So why not we continue with this, and why should we not have it?
Right,
Yes, it
sir.
is. It is also true that it is not being taught, and it is not the medium for all the parts of India, for all the schools, and it should not be. But whatever pockets there are of English medium schools, they should continue if there are people who desire to do and who are progressing, who are going upward through this. Then why not? That's the point. Sorry,
That's
I'm sorry
absolutely
for a long answer. Sorry.
no, that's absolutely correct, and I believe that it's a discussion wherein we are not questioning or answering each other. My point of view is in this connection is that English has been considered as a foreign language in Japan, whereas when we talk about English in India and Nigeria, it becomes a second language. So it keeps on changing the position, keeping in mind the local requirements as such. So when I talk about why English is considered the foreign language in Japan, I believe that in Japan, the mother tongue language is what educated in schools. And hence English has no position as a regular means of conversation in Japan. This is how English turns out to become a foreign language over there. But then in India and in Nigeria, like a state like Nigeria, it is believed that it has become a second language because the first language would be the mother tongue of the country, wherein the maximum conversation is made. To a large extent, this is evidently seen. So I believe that in our own country, if even if it is having a status of second language, uh, prima facie says that it has its own integral importance, and it cannot be denied that most of the interactions that we take, that take place in different corporates, or we talk about the government offices and correspondences that we do, normally we depend on this interpretation of this language only. What do you say about it?
I would say that to say that it is the second language would not be fully correct. It is correct. It
Right,
is more. Somewhere between the second and the third. In fact, in many parts of India, it is the third language. As you can observe,
right,
places like Gujarat, Bengal. Bengal, I would say maybe the second, because Bengal people would accept Bengali as the first, and the second would be English only. Then they don't accept any other language. But if you go to
right,
Punjab, I have seen the differences over the last 15 years. They have started using Hindi as their second language at home. Punjabi, then Hindi, then English. Gujarat, the same. Maharashtra, the same. So there are certain
true.
places where it may be the third language. There are other places where it may be the second language, depending upon. But it is important. You can't rule out its possibility, its potential that it
Right, sir.
has in India, particularly. It is no longer a foreign language. Foreign language. It is not just a foreign language like French, like German. They are foreign languages, but English is
Right.
more than a foreign language for us in India. That's the point.
Right, sir. I agree. I agree to this fact rather. But then at the same time, another thing comes to my mind that once in India, we have had a framed out language acquisition device, rather, when the people sitting in Central Institute of English and Foreign Languages and other places devised how to acquire this language. Rather, acquisition is one part that is a factor of discussion in today's platform. And people used to call it LAD, LAD, language acquisition device, which was properly framed out that a person can acquire this language by using this device. There was a great hue and cry during that period, probably, and people said, why LAD, why not LAS? So finally, it came as LAS also, language acquisition system. So, sir, I mean, to acquire a language, basically, what do you think is required? What
You
are the factors that
methods,
really, methods that we
methods.
really have to depend upon to acquire a language? Yes,
Okay. See, if I look at my own upbringing and my own life, I have seen changes in terms of the methods of teaching English itself. I am not the one who has come from the English medium background. I have come from Hindi medium background, and up to class 5, I had not even been introduced to English. And what to speak of, me becoming the medium. Even from 6, when I started learning, and when we started learning in the school, English was not the medium. So I'm not from the English medium background also. Up to 11th, I was from the Hindi medium background. And then somehow I came to a very good college where the medium was English for all the other subjects. And I found it very difficult to understand the language. Anyway, I'm giving you all these examples. So, what I am saying, as far as the methods are concerned, for me, uh, I started learning from the translation method that is called. We were learning English through Hindi.
that's true. That's true.
Right. The medium was for other subjects also was English, Hindi, and even English was taught through Hindi. So we were
Right.
taught the grammar part and all. Then translation we used to have and all that. So that was translation method.
True.
Then then the next came, which became very popular. CFL's very important scholar ML Tikku was very well known. You may have heard the name. He had written grammar books also.
ML Tikku, yes, I have
ML
heard.
Tikku, yes, professor.
Right, right. ML Tikku's
So his
grammar books,
book
yeah, yes. Very renowned professor.
his grammar book based on structural method. So anyway, structural method was one by which it was understood that a language is a set of structures of sentences. So if you want to acquire the language, you have to acquire those structures in your speech, in your writing, etc. And that is what they thought. But that was unrelated to the meaning, actually, the communication part, the meaning part. So semantics was not that important. Then later, when I became the teacher of English, then we were introduced in 93 to the new approach to language teaching. That was the communicative approach to language teaching, if you recall, and you are also a
I was a
product of
part of
that.
it. I was a
So
part of it.
how it was assumed that, and it was accepted that language is a means of communication. So
Yes,
structures by themselves are not important
true,
unless
true.
they are used for communication. So we have to keep in mind. So these were the other methods.
Correct.
But I do think that even structures are important, and even drilling is important. Drilling, the communicative method did not put emphasis on drilling. Structural method put emphasis on drilling, how to make the children,
Acquire those skills, rather.
repeat things, time and again, to speak and to write and to read. So repeating of things, sometimes without understanding, but that repeating also has its value sometimes. That is
I see.
important. So what I have understood now is that there should be an eclectic method. So
Okay.
whatever
Okay.
is the best from whichever method you use, and
Adopt.
you do the
Yes.
best. But direct method is, of course, that one important thing. Direct method is you teaching English through English. So make the best use of all, and of course translation method I would not recommend.
Not recommend today.
Not
Right, sir.
recommend, because then you don't learn the language that you're learning. You're planning to learn, you learn the other language more.
Got your point, Dr. Arunji. In fact, I believe that language acquisition is an insensible method, and it begins at the initial stage of learner, and it's not provided through education, which is basically captured or imbibed. That's what we term as acquisition of a language. But then there is a subtle difference between acquisition and learning. When we talk about learning a language, then it means that it is a kind of involvement, the participation through which the learning can take place. So the methodology that we adopt while teaching a particular language, or maybe we are talking about English today. So that involves the participation of the children, and then only the learning can be assured. So acquisition, to my mind, is an underlying method through which different skills are evolved, and due to the outcome of this utilization of language for actual conversation, the learning starts taking place. Right. So I believe that learning of the language is a kind of it is a thriving rather by education. Unless it is thrived, the learning cannot take place. A yearning is required to learn the language like English to a large extent. So the expertise that we have to gain through learning, what do you think that what kind of skills and what kind of expertise are required to basically gain in order to use this language proficiently in our life? How would you reflect your idea about it?
I mean, it's a very open-ended question, but what I believe is that, of course, it's a skill. Language is a skill-based subject. Any
Right.
language, whether it is English or Hindi or any language.
Yes.
There are different types of subjects, like you have history and pol science and all. You have knowledge-based, or where the understanding is required, then analysis is required, and all such things. Then you have science, you have observation, then you finally come to discovery and all those things. Here, a learner is expected to acquire the skill of using the language, the skill of reading, skill of writing, the four skills that we have: reading, writing, speaking, listening. And out of these four skills also, of course, there are differences, like two of them are passive, the other two are active, like reading and listening are passive, writing and speaking are active.
Active. Yeah.
And there are different ways of teaching them or learning also, acquiring them also. But basically, overall, it's a skill. So you have to, and for a skill to be acquired, one needs to do practice. And that practice, of course, is important, but learners should not lose interest. So you have to make it interesting also. But how interesting? So what will be the combination of creating interest of the learner and giving the learner the practice also? That depends on the teacher, and that depends on how committed the learner is. So I think it's a skill, and one has to do the practice for learning. And the teacher, of course, has a role. And there can be various levels of acquisition, like as we have in the classroom. You have gradation of the contents. Each class will have a higher level, the next higher level, the next higher level. So, of course, all these are the other things which can be understood.
Right, sir. We are basically emphasizing upon LSRW, and rightly said by you that the provider of the information has the communicated or writing method for communicating the views. And when we talk about recipients, basically recipients of the information uses the listening and reading expertise. So, I mean, we need to put forth this, that all these four skills are uh, imperatively required to be acquired in order to use the language in the right perspective. But besides the expertise that we are going to gain in LSRW, the usage of language, the term usage is very much confused by the teachers teaching English in the country, rather, USAGE. And the usage of language as an instrument for conversation for diverse methods and in diverse sectors, what does it need? This needs a complete expertise. Otherwise, we will not be able to use it in the right form, and we will not be able to, interpret the things in the right manner. So I think I would request you to throw some light on the usage as well, because it is very important. And all the teachers, the viewers listening to us today should understand that a command on usage would, and the acquisition of their skills, the learning of their skills would certainly excel and them give them a support to reach out to their learners in the right manner so far as the teaching of English is concerned.
It's a very challenging question that you've asked, quite a good question.
Right.
To speak on the uses, I'll begin by saying that learning is a lifelong process. And as far as the usage is concerned, I have read and I have, in fact, observed even great authors find opportunities to learn the uses. And the uses, when we say, are we talking about the uses of the vocabulary, the new words, or the existing words, and how to use them in sentences, and how to use them in paragraphs, how to connect a sentence with another sentence in paragraph? So for writing, for speaking, using these active skills, and then of course you acquire these by reading and listening. So it's a very continuous process, and in order to keep on improving the uses, one has to be very alert and sensitive. And to tell you the truth, even last year I was reading a book. I finished a book on the art of writing. Art of Writing was not the title of the book. In fact, I gave that book to my daughter. She's also a correspondent with a media company. It was related to how to make sentences. I think something like that.
Oh,
So, exact title I don't remember. A very good book.
right.
So, in order to improve, and I learned quite a bit by that also. While you're writing,
Yes.
how the next sentence should be an outcome of the previous one, and how you need to learn to make a good sentence by which you are able to express the best that you want.
Yes. So you emphasize
This
upon the cohesion and coherence part as well when
a
you are
lot
going
of
for a good
things, a lot
writing,
of
rather. Yes.
using the right words, the right frame of sentence, and a right connection of one sentence with the other. The previous sentence should be connected. The previous sentence should, lead to the next sentence, and then the next sentence should be a product of the previous sentence. All these, and then which word should be used. There may be a lot of synonyms, but which word, whether it's a formal use, whether it's a casual use, whether you want to tone down the meaning for a particular word, then you actually, so you have to keep on doing the cutting and then slashing and then polishing and then off words, off sentences, and then you are able to get, something on your platter,
Right, sir.
one which
Right,
is
right.
which would be effective, kind of, as a part of communication. So
Right. I believe it. I believe that a progressed group of learners to a large extent uses all the four expertise that they gain while learning the language like English. And at the same time, the function of language expertise in the pedagogy has a vital role to play. So the current, when we have a review of the current Indian structure of language learning, we need to understand, probably the viewers would be agreeing to what we are discussing today, that current structure, Indian structure of language learning requires much novel steps to educate language. And it also demands a lot more of productive mode through which this language can be brought to the minds of the children. And
True.
so the teaching and educating process should always require a specific structure, as you rightly said previously, that this has actually enabled the language learning to a large extent, the structured form of language, which you are emphasizing even through the book that you have written. So I believe that this point is very important, viewers, that we need to depend on the structural pattern of language, and we need to ensure that when we are teaching English in the classroom situations, we must ensure that the kind of words, the kind of uses, the sentences, the structures, the connotations, the use of synonyms and antonyms are to be taken into account to a large extent consciously. Right, sir? So I think the emphasis laid is absolutely correct. All right, Dr. Arun, you would like to add on something more to this?
Actually, what I want to say that skill of using a word or using a sentence, appropriate word or appropriate sentence or appropriate language, appropriate piece of communication that you are able to acquire, that requires alertness, sensitivity all the time. And at least a number of times, even in a day, I would like to go to Google. Right now Google is one source, but don't forget, everybody will not be able to get the right thing even on Google, because Google
True.
can mislead you also unless you know
Yes.
how to use. So even dictionary, looking up words in a dictionary requires a skill. Dictionary uses of dictionary requires a good deal of skill. I mean, if you look at a word, you look at its usage, you look at its meaning, its pronunciation, then you can see how in a sentence a word is used. Is it appreciative? Is it having a negative meaning or a positive meaning or a neutral meaning? Whether a word like fat, you want to use it for a person, or you would like to call him overweight or plump or obese, which word would you like to use?
Right.
Can we call her, hey, you've become fat? We can't call, and that is something which is offensive.
Right. True.
You can, even if you feel that the person has gained weight, you might say that, oh, you have put on some weight, it seems. I mean, something of the
Right.
sort. So,
Yes.
which word, which sentence, and all these would require a lot of alertness, and all the time
Right.
you have to
Sir,
be conscious. Sorry, yeah.
You are right in this connection, and I believe that language education via the language skills that we are talking about, LSRW, is a process, and it is a continuum, as you said correctly, that will have to be in a continuous process of learning the language throughout the life and beyond the life at times, rather. It's true. But at the same time, sir, as you are talking about the looking into the dictionary as a skill, CBSE has emphasized upon 21st century literacy skills. And I think how to look into the dictionary has become now a prominent feature in that enhancement of literacy skills of 21st century. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we can say we need to bank upon, depend upon the lexical values of the dictionary that is available in the market to a large extent. Well, sir, and further progressing along this discussion, we would like to highlight the language teaching process. How to teach is one factor. If you have got all those modes and methodologies with you, still reaching out to the learners and making them learn the language like English is a challenge. So, and especially when the children are there in a heterogeneous class from a different social background, and when they have not been exposed to the language like English, or they are the first generation learner. So in that situation, the question how to teach requires some light today in this discussion. So I wish if you could throw some light on that, how to teach a language like English in the classroom.
This how depends on who you are teaching and what is
Yes,
the requirement of the children that you're teaching or the students or who are going to be taught. And as you have already said, that there may be a diverse group of students, so you have to keep in mind how you are able to reach out to everybody, to all, to the most. So it's an open-ended question. It all depends on who they are, what their level is. I would say if I take a corpus of a class, say of 10, and I started, did I take up? Where am I? So every day it'll require a new challenge. It'll be a new challenge. So supposing I go to the class first day and I have to teach the class for a year. So I am expected to share some test for them, and by that test I am able to get what the level of the children is. Different children's level I am able to get. Then I can maybe put them into different categories: basic, intermediate, advanced, as they are called, or there can be 5 categories, say A, B, C, D, E. And accordingly, I keep in mind for A what I'll do, for B what I'll do, for C what I'll do. And in a class, so you will have to keep everything in mind. In a class, you have to go. First of all, you have to warm up with something interesting. You have to speak, and then you have to catch their attention. You have to draw their attention. And when they are ready to imbibe, then you fill in the mind with what you want to say. And once they pick up, then you give them something to do, maybe listening, maybe reading, ask them to, a classroom of a class of say 40 minutes for a language teacher, for an English teacher, would require a mix of various activities. You're warming up, then then you give them to do something, then you listen to them. Maybe if they speak, if they read, after that you give them something to do, some maybe some quiz, some writing, short thing to do. Some discussion can be there, maybe reading, then discussion, then writing, then presentation. So a lot many things can be there. Maybe out of 5 things I said, one period might have only 3, or sometimes 4, sometimes maybe 2. So multiple things should be done so that they are able to do the practice of
right.
at least 2-3 skills in a day, in a period.
Very correct. Very correct. In this connection, I would like to add on that there are a few suggested methodologies so far as learning of language L2, rather language 2 English is concerned. This processes can be assisted by giving them audio visual process, by making them exposed to audio lingual processes. Sometimes the language teaching can be done via gaming. At times they are going to play with the functions, and we come out with a very productive result of these processes being implied so far as the learning of language in the classroom or beyond the classroom situation. In today's scenario, when we are in pandemic and basically we are most of the time associated with our children online. So I think a suggestion to treat this methodology as a boon and allow them to learn through audio visual, through audio lingual processes, through gamings of the languages, and sometimes the communication processes. I believe this would help them learn the language in a better way beyond the classroom situations.
I agree. I agree. I
Right.
agree with you. Let me share with you my own experience of these days, in the sense that right now I'm not teaching English. I am teaching political science in class 12.
That's your forte even
And
otherwise that you have been into. Yes, yeah. That's great. Yeah. Okay.
so I don't know whether it's my forte, but yes, I have the background of English. So what I do is that I share with them. I use the flipped classroom method also. I share with them beforehand the chapter, and I'll ask them to read. I'll give them even during the period some time to read, and once they have read, then I'll give a gist of that, a summary of that through an audio, or maybe through a video lecture. Then I'll ask them to choose a very interesting short video on a subtopic of that, which they will share, and then they will analyze that video, whether how good the video is. Interesting, I will leave it for the timing. Whether how interesting is not important, how good the contents are, how neutral the presenter is. Supposing there is a topic like Cold War, and the Cold War involved the two superpowers, the US and the USSR. So
Right.
is it favoring the US? Is it favoring the USSR, or is it being neutral? So I would like them to judge. So I would like them
Correct.
to develop their analytical skill. Then maybe I can ask them to speak about on that topic for a minute. So so
Uh,
even there I make them learn the language, and of course other abilities, other skills, etc.
right, sir. Right.
Even
I
in
think
English,
before we proceed towards other stage of discussion, yes,
yeah, you continue. Yes.
right, right. So before we progress to the other stage of discussion, Dr. Arunji, I would like to once again reiterate that English as a language was always experimental in our country. And when you refer to 1993, when the very first time the English turned out to become a communicative language, and then the CCE, the continuous and comprehensive evaluation was initiated during that period when children had to write their answers on question come booklet, and that too that they had to finish the answers within the limitations of the words. And I remember that that time the total number of words required to be written in that question come booklet was not more than 1,400. So within 1,400 words, the entire answer sheet was ready, because against every question there was the limitation of words given. So this system continued for 10 years in our country, and in abruptly in 2003 it was withdrawn. And in the meantime, the language like Sanskrit came forth to become communicative. So communicative Sanskrit came into existence. So my point of view is that if such experiments are at a very short intervals being made with the language like English in our country, what do you think could be the reason behind it? Why is it that we need to keep on changing our methodologies in teaching learning process? Why is it that we try to make this language especially just a language of communication and not a language of learning? So, I mean, how do you perceive it in your own ways rather? Because my thinking is different here. Like, I feel that when there is a provision of learning a language, that should not be minimized to making it as a communicative language only.
See, your this question has got so many different sub questions, I would say, but I'll stick to one only.
Yes.
What the government has done and what the government will do, I don't know. Actually, we are academicians. We should focus on what we are doing and what better we can do. Uh, my point is, if we look at the historical method, historically, if we look at the methods that we have had in our country, uh, we used to have literature-based teaching uh,
Yes.
before before 93 in India. Literature-based, when I say, our objective, it seemed, was not to the objective of teaching English was not to teach the language, not to help the children acquire the skill of reading, writing, speaking, listening, or language as a whole also. The objective, if you look at the question paper that we used to have, of course, reading was there, comprehension was there, and then there were questions from the books. Books means
Textual.
stories and poems, texts, textual
Right.
questions.
Right.
So if a child has learnt the answers or the questions based on those stories and the poems which were there in the book, then they will be able to get good marks. And then, of course, the grammar questions, if they have answered, they will get good marks. Whether they are able to speak as well, or read as well, or write as well, or not. Maybe there's another child who is a better speaker, better listener, better reader, but might not get as good marks because of that literature thing. So the
Right. Right.
focus was to expose them to literature, but even that was not there. Only question answer was there. I mean, if you have learned the answers of the questions by heart, the important questions, you've got good marks. You have not learned the language.
True.
93 brought a major change, and I
Yes.
still feel that was a very good step. I feel that very often what we do is that we go two steps forward and then we then step back and go back one step backward. So 93 was a good step. First time it was recognized that English is a language. The children should acquire it as a language. And
Okay.
literature can be a tool, can be a resource for teaching the language. Not that it should have been the objective at least up to the secondary level or even senior secondary level. Beyond that,
Right.
literature can be read and can be appreciated. Can be children should be exposed in the higher classes to literature to help them, understand and appreciate and all that kind. But otherwise, in the school scenario, the objective should have been even before 93. So we were late even then, but it was only because of CBSE's initiative and the tie-up with British Council that they got in touch with the best uh, of English teaching, and they did a lot of training, and me and you or everybody, a large number of teachers, English teachers, they were taught, and there were visible changes. I think many things were happening, and
Right.
we learned to make questions and so many things. Later, it continued also, but of course, recently it has been changed. Now again, the government is recognizing the fact, and as far as language is concerned, anyway, I think
Right. Right.
so.
Yes, you are correct in this connection. And I believe that English has been taken up in different framework all through so far as secondary and senior secondary education are concerned. We have seen that English has taken a shape of the core. It has taken the shape of the alternative English. It has become language and literature today. So when we talk about the nuances of teaching learning, of the language like English in the classroom, children to a large extent are not very sure about one thing. Whenever I talk to them and I come across this fact that where should they concentrate upon? Say, when we talk about the four parts which are the integral parts of assessment of the language like English, in class 9 and 10, and simultaneously in class 11 and 12 as well, that we emphasize upon the reading comprehension of the unseen passages, we emphasize upon writing tasks, then we to a large extent emphasize upon the grammatical items, the uses, and finally we depend upon the interpretations of the literature. When you are emphasizing on a very important factor of the then period, that we used to learn literature, and through literature the language. That was the mode of learning of language in English. Well, but then of late what we are realizing, that the children are not at all interested in reading the literature. Rather, they believe that since the good grades and the good marks can be obtained from doing the tasks of writing and doing the tasks of reading, they emphasize upon it more. And even otherwise, we see that the weightage is very less given on the literature part in the curriculum, in the syllabus that has been charted out for those children to learn. So my query, or rather my understanding says that, well, if this continues for a long time, wherein children are simply preparing for the examinations based on the reading comprehension and the writing and the uses, how far will it be possible for them to appreciate the literature and to enjoy life through language?
I think the answer lies in the priorities. Even in this, literature is a tool, is used as a resource. The only thing is that the proportion is less. Uh, it has been recognized in the schools to help the children learn English as a language. So whatever is being used as resources, they are used to help them learn the language. Whether all the four skills, of course, the skills of reading, writing, speaking, listening. And in the course of that, they should be exposed to various genre of literature also, but they should not be in the forefront, and the objective should not be to expose them. Of course, exposure should be there, but the objective should be clear, that it should be to teach the language, to help them acquire the language. And of course, in the course of that, they will surely appreciate. The proportion would be less, because what is a language? Language is a means of communication, and the children need to learn to communicate well, communicate through reading, through speaking, through writing. Once they acquire this, gradually, if they become interested in the language, they will surely be interested in literature also, and then they will choose the path of even appreciating literature in due course, I think.
Right, sir. I think a lot of lights have been thrown upon the structure of syllabus that is being implemented by CBSE. But sir, in the recent past, we have had a profound discussion on NEP 2020. Now, on this platform, it's very important for all of us to throw a little light on the future of English language in the purview of NEP 2020, and the steps being taken by CBSE to basically implement it in due course of time. So what do you think when they talk about using language, home language, the mother language, and what you call the local language to teach the subjects in the classrooms, especially for the foundation years and the preparatory years? So how do you feel that the language like English would exist there if this situation is taken up into practices?
I am yet to understand the terms, which term is accepted, because it all depends on the government, what they will accept. What do they understand by home language? What do they understand by mother tongue? Because I told you that I know that there are families in India are who are using English as their home language. So will they
Right.
accept this? And if they accept, probably they may or they may not, because they might say that the size of the population speaking that home language should be this much. If that size is less than that, then it will not be a home language. Maybe, I think so. Actually, all these terms have to be defined. Actually, this document has come that is subject to interpretations, and those interpretations will be based on what government further clarifies and how it comes into practice. But and there are a lot of windows also that the government has given. The government says that the medium of instruction should be one of these, like what you've said, mother tongue, or home language, or local language, or regional language. So one aspect of that, let us forget English. If it is home language or regional language, a state like Bihar, I think I am from Bihar, so I would say that there are four regional languages here: Maithili, Bhojpuri, Maghi, Vajjika, Angika. These are different local languages. So, will that
Yes.
be a medium? I think if it has not become the medium right now, then it would be difficult, and that medium will not increase. The number of people choosing that as a medium is not going to increase, even if it is there. And because Maithili is one of the languages in the eighth schedule. You might be aware, Bhojpuri is not.
Yes, it
But
is.
according to this, of course, even Bhojpuri
Right.
can be used, even Maghi can be used, and even Vajjika. And I think I am able to understand. But it will be clear only when the
Yeah,
government says
true.
no, this is not the home language. This is whatever. So
Okay.
these are many things which are to be defined, to be made clear. But one thing is clear, that we have gone forward a lot. We have gone ahead in terms of acquiring a language like English, and it is not going to lose its importance in the world and even in India. I am sure a lot have gone down the course of our country in terms of linguistic developments. And is it possible to turn the clock back? The time will tell. But I'm optimistic about English, and I think English is going to continue. It will further be used, and more people will use, because it is not just because the government says, it is also
Right.
what the aspirations of the people are.
Ah, that's true. That's true.
Right. I think if the people will aspire, because even in that document it is said that you can use bilingual method, bilingual medium also.
Right,
If
sir.
there are people who say that I don't understand, there's a diverse group of students in your class, and the school says that yes, all of them say that you use bilingual or 98% of A language or B language, or maybe say that all of them want this only, then what to do?
True.
Then how will you
So,
define? How will the government? I am unable to understand all these things.
so the time
Will be,
is there
the time will tell. Yeah,
time will decide about it.
yeah.
Right, sir. I think it was a very enlightening discussions today on EduTalk. And dear viewers, you must have got a lot more of insights so far as the status of English in India is concerned. And I'm pretty sure that you would, as a teacher, take it as an opportunity to make more productive efforts in teaching English in the right perspective into the classrooms. That's all from all of us today from EduTalk at the behest of Harbour Press International. Once again, I extend my heartfelt thank to Dr. Arunji, who has spared his precious time to be with me on this discussion. And I'm pretty sure this would be giving a lot more of happy insights to all the viewers today. Thank you so much for watching us live on YouTube. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Thank you. Thank you so much, and good night.
Good night.